But in this country that we have been celebrating 250 years of freedom. Freedom of speech, the freedom to assemble peacefully. We tend to sometimes forget that the freedom to assemble is actually if we're doing it peacefully, but freedom to assemble peacefully. We have the right to bear arms. We have these freedoms that we talk a lot about and we fight a lot about and we argue about what that freedom actually means and what you can actually do with it. And it's this big, huge, messy circle of freedom that many of us at least love to live in and we're grateful that we live in. But I've been wondering a lot lately if maybe sometimes our pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness in the American way has actually turned into a habit of giving away our freedom. Over and over again, just saying we have the freedom to do whatever we want, and when we do whatever we want, we actually give away the freedom that we're fighting so hard to maintain. And here's what I mean by that. A couple of things. Number one, 8 out of 10 adults, this is all according to the Dave Ramsey Solutions in 2024, so this is a little bit old. These stats are a little bit old. 8 out of 10 adults have at least one credit card. Okay, not a big deal. 48% of the people who have a credit card carry a balance on that credit card. And by carrying a balance, what that means is that at the end of the month, they don't pay off the credit card. And so it accumulates and it grows. And what that amounts to is about 100 million people that are carrying a balance every month on their credit card. Again, some of us are sitting here like, that's no big deal, whatever. The average credit card debt per person is $6,500, which translates for America to $1.13 trillion in credit card debt. The average credit card debt per household, understanding that some households there are multiple people that have credit cards. Sometimes kids have credit cards. There may be adults living, adult children living in the household, and so this is accumulating to that as well. The average credit card debt per household is $19,865. The average, now here's where this starts to become a real problem. The average annual percentage rate on a credit card is 22.63%. That's nuts. I'm just throwing that out there. Which means that every year, the credit card companies are making $256 billion off of interest payments alone on the credit cards that we as Americans have. And actually, I looked it up, that's risen since this 2024 Ramsey numbers that they came up with. It's actually risen to $1.28 trillion in credit card debt, which is $65.95 per person. So just credit card debt alone. Then we have auto debt, which accounts for $1.6 trillion in American debt. Is on our vehicles. The average household is $36,832 in debt on their vehicles alone. The average monthly car payment for a new car is $738 per month, and for a used car is $532. And 35%, which accounts for about 44 million homes, have auto debt. So we've got 48% of Americans carrying credit card debt, 35% of Americans carrying auto debt. Now, I will point this out, that often what I'll hear is there's just no way to have a car and not have debt. To which I would say, what are those other 65% doing? It's obviously possible, and no, you don't have to be rich to do it. Then we get into mortgages, and I'm not even going to throw those numbers out there. And we get into school loans, and I'm not even going to throw those numbers out there because then we're going to have to get into the whole debate as to whether or not we should just pay off everybody's school loans and all this stuff. So we're not even going to go into those. But just looking at the credit card and the auto debt, we are looking for Americans $2.73 trillion in debt. for those two categories alone. And actually, mortgage debt is the biggest number of them all, which makes sense. Houses are usually the most expensive thing that we buy. If you've ever been in debt, or if you're currently in debt, you know a truth. And that truth is that when we carry debt, we are not free. In fact, I just had this conversation with my 15-year-old who's in the process of buying a car. And she went to IYC. Sorry, Keely, I'm telling our conversation here. I'm sure this is a conversation that many of you have had at some point. But we had the conversation if she hasn't worked for the past couple of weeks because she went to IYC, but it's time for a car payment. And she's like, but I don't have any money. And I said, it doesn't matter. Because when you owe money, it doesn't matter if you have money, you still owe money. And they still expect your money. Now, she's fortunate enough that her loan, whatever you call it, originator, is me. And so I love her enough to not, punish her with 20% interest rates and everything. But she's going to make it still. And until she pays off that loan, guess who she owes money to every single month? Now, some of you are like, I can't believe you're not buying your kid a car. Well, sorry, I'm not. Church, we don't have to have this stuff. But when we do, every single month, somebody else has a right to our freedom. And we are not free until we've paid them off. The pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness, many times what we've found with individuals, in fact, I would say the majority of the time when they go into this extreme debt, is that they don't find any of those things by trying to fill their life with things. Ask yourself, when was the last time that having something more or bigger actually left you feeling freer and long-term joyful? Or was it you got the more and the bigger, and then it was a month or two later is I want something more and I want something bigger because what I have now is already out of date. Anyone who buys an iPhone knows that next year your iPhone's junk. But you have to, now if you own a Google phone, that'll last you 7 years. But your iPhones, you get a year and everyone's like, oh, your phone's, that's trash. Can't believe you're using that old thing. Okay, not really. The enemy will stretch us so thin with this lie that we have to have more and we have to have better. He will stretch us so thin that there is nothing left over for God or for ourselves. And we consistently, as Americans and as humans, we consistently give our freedom away to the demand of more. And then we find other ways to give it away. We give our freedom away when we find addictive behaviors or substances that we jump into, knowing ahead of time, many times, that these are areas in life that people have issues with. And we've got the big three. We've got alcohol, drugs, and porn. We talk about those all the time. You hear about them all the time. Even growing up, we heard about drugs in the schools, and that was 25 years ago. We had the DARE program. We had all these. We have AA. We have all of these organizations to help us deal with these addictions. We have porn addictions that we talk about in church because it's a sinful behavior, and so we address it. We can go into gambling addictions, all of these things. But what about some of the things that we kind of try and sweep under the rug and give away our freedom to, like addictions to caffeine? I know you're not supposed to bring that one up in church, because how else are you supposed to start a morning than with a cup of coffee? Don't even talk to me until I've had a cup of coffee. Personally, I think black coffee is disgusting, so that's not an issue for me, but other forms of caffeine are. And how many times do we become enslaved to the addiction of, I've got to have my caffeine? Church, it wasn't that long ago that I was 500-600 milligrams a day. I didn't drink. If I had water, it came in the form of an Alani, and that was it. It draws us in, and we begin to justify it, but we begin to be enslaved to it. If you don't believe me, try not having it for a week, and tell me how bad your headache is. Or these screens that we keep around us all the time. I mean, we know the stats. We hear the stats, but we are always the exception to the rule. I'm not addicted to the screen. You're addicted. I'm not addicted. Don't you dare call me addicted. I'm not addicted to social media. You're addicted, not me. I just use it to keep up with people and all the drama and all the other stuff and the 5 hours of my day. I'm not addicted. Why don't you say, put it away for a week? Prove to us you're not addicted. Don't touch it. Well, but I can't do that because of this and this and this and this and that. You know what that sounds like? It sounds like an addict. See, we love to talk about addictions in the form of the big three or the big four, but what about the things that we struggle with that are pulling us away, that are taking away our freedoms because we can't go without them? And if we can't go without it, then it becomes our master. And if something is your master, guess what you're not? Free. The enemy will make us so distracted that we don't even notice God anymore in our lives. And we don't even notice the harm that is being done to ourselves. We give away our freedom to the pull of immediate gratification. And it comes in so many different forms. And we give away our freedom to our schedules every single day, every single week. Now, I know we've got to work, we've got to make income, we've got to provide. I'm not saying that we don't have demands on our schedules, but we can allow our schedules to become our master instead of us to master our schedule. It can be through sports, it can be through school, it can be through work. And if you're sitting there and you're thinking, it's not a master of my life, it's just these are things that I have to do or these are things that are expected, then I would say, okay, ask yourself for a moment, whose command would you give the first response to, the most dedicated response to? If the coach comes out and says, I need you here at practice at such and such a time, who are you going to listen to, that one or your work or God? Who receives the first? Who's first on the priority list? Is it family time or is it anything else? What's first on the list on your schedule? Because we can so quickly give away our freedom to the demands of the calendar. And in fact, sometimes it's kind of worn as a badge of honor when we sit and someone says, how you doing? Oh, I'm good, but man, I'm busy. Let me tell you about all the things that I have on my schedule because I am such a big deal. And my child who's going to go pro someday, they're a big deal. And so I've got to wipe everything off of my calendar clean so that my child who's going to go pro someday, I can give them everything that I never had. And we begin to let the calendar, the schedules become our masters. Corrie ten Boom is known for saying, if the devil can't make you bad, he'll make you busy. If the devil can't make you that person that everyone looks at and goes, man, they're just a terrible person, nobody wants to be around them, then he'll make you so busy that you can't give your life to the things that you want to or need to give your life to, that you have no margin. We constantly give away our freedom to FOMO. We give away our freedom to the fear of missing out on what everybody else is doing. This freedom that we hold so dear, we give away to schedules, we give it away to addictions, we give it away to debt, to the pursuit of more. And what we find in so many other things, I'm not even going to go into all the other things we give it to, but what we find in the end is that we're no longer free. Because the truth is, we will serve something. Humans were created to serve. We will serve someone or something. The question is, who or what will that be? Will we serve something that continues to rob us of joy, rob us of peace, rob us of time? Or will we serve one who does the complete opposite? In Matthew chapter 6, Jesus is talking to his followers and he says, don't store up treasures here on earth where moths eat them and rust destroys them and where thieves break in and steal. Store your treasures in heaven where moths and rust cannot destroy and thieves do not break in and steal. For wherever your treasure is, there the desires of your heart will be also. Your eye is like a lamp that provides light for your body, and when your eye is healthy, your whole body is filled with light. But when your eye is unhealthy, your whole body is filled with darkness. And if the light you think you have is actually darkness, how deep that darkness is. No one can serve two masters. For you will hate one and you will love the other. You will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and be enslaved by money. Now, this is where a lot of people stop and they say, okay, as long as I'm not rich, then I'm fine. It's no big deal. And I'm not rich, so I'm fine. We ignore the part where God says, no, you just can't serve two masters. Period. It doesn't matter if money is the other master, if schedule is the other master. It doesn't matter if addiction is the other master. You cannot serve two masters. And that is why I tell you not to worry about everyday life. This is where the promise that Jesus gives us gets so beautiful. Whether you have enough food and drink or enough clothes to wear, isn't life more than food and your body more than clothing? Look at the birds. They don't plant or harvest or store food in barns, for your heavenly Father feeds them. And aren't you far more valuable to Him than they are? Can all your worries add a single moment to your life? And why worry about your clothing? Look at the lilies of the field and how they grow. They don't work or make their clothing, yet Solomon in all of his glory was not dressed as beautifully as they are. And if God cares so wonderfully for wildflowers that are here today and thrown into the fire tomorrow, He will certainly care for you. And see, that's the difference between a master of the world that demands and extracts and enslaves, and the master that we know of as Jesus, is that His desire is to remove worries from your life. His desire is to remove burdens from your life. His desire is to give you peace because He certainly cares for you. So don't worry about these things, saying, what will we eat? What will we drink? What will we wear? These things dominate the thoughts of unbelievers, but your heavenly Father already knows all your needs. Seek the kingdom of God above all else and live righteously, and He will give you everything that you need. So don't worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will bring its own worries. Today's trouble is enough for today. Church, I fully believe that we have a really bad habit of giving away our freedoms. And we justify it in so many different ways. And truthfully, as parents, and I'm speaking as a parent, I'm not throwing all the other parents under the bus, many times we justify it with the excuse of, well, I want my kids to have more than I did. I want my kids to have a better life than I did. I want them to have a nicer car. I want them to have a better house. I want them to have less burdens on their shoulders. And yet, if you read the research, what we see over and over again is it's not stuff that makes our kids feel lighter and more peaceful and more full of joy. It's us. It's our presence. And not the presence under a tree or the presence on their birthday, but it's actually having us in their lives. And not even necessarily on the sidelines of their games, because you can read the research there that shows that it actually is beneficial to a kid to have their parents miss a game every now and then, just like our parents did. But over and over and over again, we see that relationships don't come through screens. And what kids are really looking for is a relationship with their parent that's a face-to-face relationship. Or, because sometimes we know the parents aren't around, an adult in their life that will care for them. And that's where for some of us, we don't have kids at home, but we can still care for kids. And even adults, you can read the research over and over, and we read it and we ignore it. We throw it aside. We're like, yeah, but that's not me. I'm the exception. We're not the exception. I hate to break it to us, we're not the exception. We need relationship. We need community, and it doesn't come through a screen. When it comes through a screen, what we do is we lose freedom. When we're looking for the likes and the hearts, what we do is we lose freedom because the addiction becomes, I've got to have the like, and I've got to have the heart, and if I don't receive it, then nobody cares about me. Whereas God tells us there is a different kind of freedom that I want you to have. And when we begin to pursue that kind of freedom, we begin to live a different way, and we begin to see a different truth. And we see it in Galatians 5:13 when Paul writes to the church in Galatia, "For you have been called to live in freedom." Called to live in freedom. Not just like, hey, if you want it, but it's as a follower of Christ, you are called to live in freedom, my brothers and sisters. But don't use your freedom to satisfy your sinful nature. Those desires that the heart, that the flesh has. Instead, use your freedom to serve one another in love. I've taken a lot of kids, youth, on trips over the years. I've taken them on the really exciting, big IYC camp blowout trips, and I've taken them on the dirty, nasty mission trips. And so often what we found is that the kids came back feeling the most joy, feeling the most fulfilled, feeling the closest to God, feeling the closest to each other when they came back from the dirty, nasty mission trip. Because they'd spent time serving other people instead of just being entertained and being served. And our families are the same way. We're the same way. The greater joy comes at serving versus fulfilling the wants and desires. But that's not the American way. And I understand it's not the American way. But here's the thing about following Jesus. Many times it's said that there are American Christians, and it needs to be reversed. Church, it should be Christian Americans. It should be that Christ is first and we're Americans second. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. By grace you have been saved so we can do the good things planned for us long ago. The truth will set you free, and if the Son sets you free, you are truly free indeed. So I have a little test for you this morning. We'll call it a freedom test. It's just questions for you to ask. In your freedom, are you serving others in love? In your freedom, are you giving your family your best? Or are you giving your family your leftovers? In your freedom, are you leaving margin to care for the needy? Or are you strapped so thin that there's nothing left? And in your freedom, are you giving God your first? Or does He just get your last? If you're sitting in here this morning and you're going, I want the kind of freedom that God promises, the freedom from anxiety, the freedom from depression, the freedom from debt, the freedom from being a slave to my calendar, the freedom from addictions. Church, we can help with that. Not with our power and not because we are so wise, but because we believe in the power of a God who sets people free each and every single day. I don't believe you have to make a lot of money to not be strapped down by debt. I don't believe you have to have the most willpower of any person alive in order to fight addiction. And I don't believe you have to be an introvert recluse in order to not have your calendar be your master. I believe that God can set us free from each and every single one of those things. And we would love to walk through towards that freedom with you. I know we're in a culture these days where coming to the altar isn't really the favorite thing for people to do, but this may be a moment where you need to do that. Or it may be a day where you need to pull somebody aside afterwards and say, hey, I've given my life over to this, XYZ, and I don't want that to control my life anymore. I want the freedom that God promises us, a God who cares about us, a God who died for us, a God who defeated sin, a God who said you don't have to worry about all the things in this life, a God who said that my yoke is easy and my burden is light, a God who says cast all your cares upon me, that I want the freedom that God gives. Don't leave here today and go right back into making excuses as to why you can't have that. He went to a cross and defeated a grave exactly so that you could have that. In our country, we have men and women who have gone for the past 250 years and given their lives so that we can have freedom. We have men and women who continue to do that today, who give their lives so that we can have the freedom to sit in this room right now the way that we are. They give their lives so that we can have the freedom to argue about stupid stuff. We have a God who gave his life so that we could have an eternity without worry and anxiety and full of peace. And he wants to give it to you.